Hello YouTube, this is Thomas 1 Edward 2 Henry 3 here. I had fun doing my Great Race review. Sure, it was a hell lot of work and took way too long, but the end result was very rewarding. I thought to myself, what should I review next? I love doing reviews, though I'm not quite ready to do a review of every season, and I've reviewed all the specials. Then a thought occurred to me. Why don't I just talk about my favorite episodes? It's something I love doing, and am very passionate about, so it would be easy. And then, of course, I saw the Unlucky Tug's Top 10 Episodes video. And I thought, you know what? I'll do it. I was originally going to do a top 10 episodes, but there were just so many episodes I wanted to talk about that I decided to make this a two-part thing. Now, of course, these are all purely opinion. If you don't like an episode on this list, or think there's one that should be on the list, that's fine. But remember, this is top 10, 20 favorite episodes, not top 20 best as far as adaptation, story, and general fan consensus. And just to be safe, I'm gonna flip the videos to avoid copyright detection. I know it's probably fine, but I've already got a copyright strike on my channel, and with something this large, I just couldn't risk it. It's just such a big batch of episodes. But without further ado, here are my top 20 favorite Thomas the Tank Engine episodes. Part 1. Number 20. Come Out Henry and Henry to the Rescue, or The Sad Story of Henry and Edward, Gordon, and Henry. I put these two together because it's a two-parter. These were my dad's favorite stories as a child. He had a few Railway Series books, and this story always stood out to him. And I can see why. It's just a classic fun little tale. A train doesn't want to leave a tunnel, so rather than trying reasonable attempts to pull him out, the controller just bricks him up. It's hilarious. One thing I do like about this story is the moral. Henry only thinks about himself. He doesn't give a damn about the passengers who have to get to their destinations regardless of the weather, just his paintwork that can easily be fixed. Therefore, though a bit strange, the Fat Controller's punishment is completely justified. I guess one thing that made these two episodes special was how hard they were to find as a child. I would say they're the rarest episodes in the United States. They were only on the Thomas Gets Tricked VHS, which I only saw 2 or 3 times as a child, and that was only Ringo Starr's version. George Carlin's narration was never released on any VHS, and until about 6 years ago, the only Carlin version of Henry to the Rescue available was an extremely shitty quality one ripped from Shining Time Station. However, with YouTube and digital downloads, these two classic episodes can now be watched and relived whenever desired. Number 19. Double Teething Troubles. Bill and Ben, in my opinion, were Alec Baldwin's best character voices. They are just hilarious. They sound like Mickey Mouse's grumpy uncle or something. Double Teething Troubles was one of the show's funniest episodes just for that reason. These mischievous twins are always a treat, and here it's no exception. The beginning quarrel with them derailing is one of their best moments, actually. I don't know what it is, but the toothache quote has me in stitches every time.
Why does Percy want to wish us good luck? Because he knows we'll need it. A diesel with a toothache must be the worst diesel of all.
It's actually one of the funniest quotes from the show. Why is that? But I like how they're shown to be really hard-working too in this episode. They pull both the trucks and a broken diesel without any trouble. Derek is also an interesting character. He's actually one of the friendliest diesels in the show. It's a shame we never saw him again. No, calling all engines doesn't count. I don't know if it was just me, but I always thought his breakdowns were basically the equivalent of someone shitting themselves. I mean, the smoke's brown. Come on. Also, this is Boko's last appearance. Let's have a moment of silence for that. Number 18. A Better View for Gordon. This is Gordon at his best. A big, blue, arrogant, pompous ass. It's just so enjoyable to watch him like this. His rant about the boring wall is just classic. I don't really know how to explain it, but I find Grumpy Gordon very entertaining. But what's also funny is how his words bite him back not once, but twice. The crash is great too. If you didn't know, it's based off of a real crash in Paris in 1895. Remember the crash from Hugo? That's the exact one. This is also one of the rare times where we see the Fat Controller injured, and his comment to Gordon is priceless. I know most of you will disagree, but I love Alec Baldwin's Gordon voice. In Season 5, at least. Yes, he sounds extremely retarded, but I don't care. It just made the experience of watching this even better for me as a kid.
Help me, please.
Also, we all know James is a mega roaster.
The sky's empty. Like your smoke box, Percy.
That's all I can really say. Great crash, great character interaction. It's one of my favorite GORODN episodes. Number 17, Toad Stands By. There are many reasons why Oliver beats Duck, but the biggest is that Oliver is a complete badass. He gets shoved into a turntable by the trucks, and what does he do in return? He literally rips the leader apart. Yeah, Oliver's character development is just awesome. He goes from a little arrogant wimp to a thug who takes no shit. I love Scruffy too. I was lucky enough to get him in Wooden Railway, though I always got angry because I couldn't reenact him breaking. George Carlin got Scruffy's voice perfectly. He sounds like a 20s gangster, and he's just a lot of fun. Carlin also nailed the Trucks song. Angelus did good too, but I found it odd how he was basically shouting the whole thing.
When the orders of suburbs, when the grapes is falling, we just push them down the well.
Ah well, I always thought Carlin's Toad voice was annoying, so it levels out. But I like Toad's role too. This is the first time where he actually spoke, and Oliver couldn't have beat the Trucks without him. This episode was epic for me as a child, and still is today. Oliver is the Great Western MVP. Number 16, Henry and the Elephant. This episode is interesting as it's the first story not to be adapted in the order it was written in the Railway series. It should have been after Thomas and Bertie, but wasn't made until 3 seasons later. And I never understood why. It's not a hard episode to adapt. But anyway, this is just such a fun story. An elephant gets loose and causes all sorts of problems. I don't know if it was the music or the way it was shot, but that scene where Henry goes through the tunnel was always so intense as a kid. Also, I absolutely love the sound effect they used for the workmen running out.
And they ran out.
I always wondered if they just taped or glued the elephant to the trucks in that one shot. You know what I mean? But anyway, it's a fun episode with funny moments that always stuck with me as a child. Whenever I watched the Gallant Old Engine VHS, it was always my favorite.
Poor Henry.
Number 15, Toby and the Flood. This probably was the most difficult episode to film, and they pulled it off brilliantly. Toby and the Flood is an action-packed adventure that always got me in a hyped-up mood whilst watching my Races, Rescues, and Runaways VHS, in which it was the first episode. It's amazing how they managed to create the rivers and the dam explosion. It's pretty damn impressive. Also, I bet they used tomato soup in the water. The sets themselves look incredible too. They're so simple, yet the lighting and the sky backgrounds give it this dark, grim atmosphere. You know shit's about to happen. The music is incredible. The somber piece that plays at the beginning is one of my favorites from Mike and Jr. Now, this episode does have a few issues, like why did Toby just wait for the bridge to collapse and yeah, so forth, but everything else completely overshadows it, so I don't care. Toby and the Flood is an epic rescue story that never gets old for me. Number 14, Donald and Douglas, or Brake Van, and the Deputation. These are only 2 out of Season 2's legendary episodes. A lot of those came from my Thomas, Percy, and the Dragon VHS. Now that's an episode I really wanted to feature on this list too, but it just couldn't top the others. Donald and Douglas take nonsense from no one, and that's why they are 2 of my all-time favorite characters. When a brake van starts causing problems for them, they smash it to pieces. But despite that, they still try their hardest to show how useful both of them are. Everything that could go wrong basically goes wrong for the twins. Donald has an accident, they have to deal with an asshole brake van, and though not shown on TV, but they also misplace a coach, which causes all sorts of havoc. You'd think the Fat Controller would have had enough by then. But the one thing that isn't broken or smashed is Donald and Douglas's spirit and determination. And to add to that, the engines all band together to get a firm message across to the Fat Controller. I've always loved Percy's conversation with him.
Percy jumped. Yes, sir, please, sir.
If Bill and Ben were Alec Baldwin's best character voices, then by God, Donald and Douglas are by far George Carlin's best.
You're a muckle nuisance, said Donald.
It's to leave you behind I be wanting.
Ringo does great too, but he just can't compete. George is having a ball with it. The fact that the most American foul-mouthed comedian can do such a great Scottish accent just goes to show how extremely talented George Carlin was. Regardless of narrator though, I love Donald and Douglas. Again, they're very high on my favorite characters list, almost at the top. Again, they stand no nonsense from no one. Honestly, their music theme is probably my favorite out of the 11 main engines. The Spiteful Brakeman was also nailed. He has, 2 lines, yet that's all he needs. The face does the rest. He looks like someone who's about to do some serious shit. Luckily, he gets completely wrecked. Oh yeah, I meant both types of wreck. I gotta stop doing that. Also, in that shot of his face being lifted by the crane, is he still alive or is he dead? If so, that means, holy crap, he's the first character to die on screen. Number 13, Rusty and the Boulder. Okay, I know exactly what half of you are thinking. Seriously? This Disneyland cash grab? Maybe it is, but they put major quality into it. This is a controversial episode. Fans either seem to love it or hate it. I'm obviously in the favorite category, but I can totally see why one wouldn't like this episode. This premise is a bit silly and definitely wouldn't have a place in Wilbur Awdry's books. And yeah, one could consider it the first episode made for merchandise. Neither the Boulder or Thumper appear or are mentioned again. And if you don't like this episode, that's totally fine. I fully understand why. But here's why I thought it worked. They put so much emotion and effort into it. They never officially acknowledge whether the boulder is alive or not. The audience are the only ones who see the face appears on the boulder, so that even leads to more mystery. And that's what's so great about this episode. Mystery. It just has such an eerie feel to it. The boulder is terrifying, even if there's no way a boulder would be that round in real life. The last lines from the narrator are some of the most goose-bumping inducing lines ever.
That its sighs are being carried on the wind to where it once used to stand proud and silent.
And so is the music, again from Toby and the Flood. And that last shot of the Fat Controller is chilling. It's like he sees something we don't. Now, about the action, well, it's pretty damn awesome. Again, I don't care if it's unrealistic, it always had me on the edge of my seat. Also, this is the first time we see an actual explosion in the shed. Holy crap! It always confuses me to this day what caused it. Was there dynamite in those sheds? I'll also add that this is the first episode on this list that was on a very special VHS called Spills and Chills. Now that was my shit. I still remember to this day watching it for the first time. I'd never seen anything like it before, and boy did it entertain me with the spooky and action-packed adventures that it had from Season 5. It was, and is to this day, my all-time favorite Thomas and Friends VHS or DVD. Number 12, Stepney Gets Lost. This is another episode from Spills and Chills, and I'll say this. Stepney Gets Lost is officially the darkest episode of Thomas and Friends. It has to be. Not the scariest, but definitely the darkest. Nenjin gets sent to a room where he will get dropped in a pool of sizzling metal and fire to be melted down. I don't know about you, but that's pretty much the equivalent of a gas chamber in a concentration camp. Okay, I admit I analyzed that a bit too far, but you get the idea. This was one episode that always stuck with me as a child. It wasn't necessarily my favorite back then, but I've really started to appreciate it more as I got older. The one thing that makes this episode so chilling is the sets. These sets are very simple, but the way they lit them made them terrifying. The bright red smelters is pretty much what hell would look like. And what makes this scene even more disturbing is the absence of music. I can't really explain why, but having no music makes the moment far more disturbing. I never thought the episode went too far, though. The claw's function's never revealed, and we don't actually see the molten metal, and of course, Stepney gets rescued in the end. But Britt and David went full out with this episode, and that's what I praise them for. Now, there are a few problems that I recognize, like why Ari and Bert were able to just scrap Stepney when he's already been rescued and restored. And honestly, I think this episode would have worked better with Oliver as the main character, because his struggle with Scrap is a more personal one. but those are minor issues. What worked well was perfect. Also, I gotta add that before they were tamed in the 6th season, Ari and Bert were the scariest characters in the whole show. Well, okay, maybe except for that truck, but you get the idea. Anyway, Stepney Gets Lost took many risks, and most of them hit bullseye for me. It's just as terrifying every time I watch it. Also, there's something so satisfying about the last line in the music.
Bluebells forever.
Number 11. Busy Going Backwards. Toad was never given any time to shine in the Railway series. Of course, Oliver wasn't either, but Toad's only major role was in Toad Stands By. So it's great that in the 5th season they gave both Toad and Oliver some major screen time. And Busy Going Backwards was a legendary episode. First of all, I think this is the first time that a rolling stock character got the main role. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's a neat achievement. But second, it is a complete runaway of humor and action-packed adventure. It is the best moment of the Troublesome Trucks in my opinion. It's just so epic, but wouldn't have been nearly as epic without the William Tell Overture. Good God, praise to you, Mike and Junior, brilliant choice. It's because of this episode that it's my favorite piece of classical music. This episode has some hilarious moments too. Toad smashing through the gates, Oliver's corny joke, the conductor leaping off the train. Seriously, look at his expression. Speaking of expressions, the part where they almost hit Gordon still has me in stitches today. I don't know why. The facial expressions are gold. He's like, "Holy shit!" And James's line, "Oh my God." The way Alec Baldwin voiced him in this episode has me dying every time.
Oh my goodness!
Yes, make your own conclusions, but I think James has a pretty obvious secret. We all know. Heck, even Conan O'Brien brought it up with Baldwin.
What was that? Exclaimed James.
Speaking of voices, Baldwin's voice for Toad was spot on. A posh little break band with a lot of dignity. It would have been interesting if Alec kept the voices had Toad and Oliver appeared in Season 6. But regardless, Baldwin's take on Toad just adds to how great this episode is. Yes, this episode is fantastic. So fantastic that I feel putting it 11th is a real insult, but it just couldn't top the next 10 episodes. But it's still a runaway adventure that will almost throw you off the rails with excitement. Number 10. Thomas and the Jet Engine, or Thomas the Jet Engine. Go watch the Unlucky Tug's top 10 list. He explains everything about this episode. But okay, I'll share my opinion. For me, Season 6 is my least favorite of the classic era. Some of the stories were a little clunky, and it was just so, well, ugly. The dull lighting, basic sets, and terribly painted engines made it lifeless. And of course, Alec Baldwin's completely toned-down narration didn't help.
Scary Jack Frost, cried James.
However, there were a few episodes I thoroughly enjoyed, like Harvey to the Rescue, Duncan, World's Strongest Episodes, the Pack episodes, and especially Thomas and the Jet Engine. Like Rusty to the Rescue, it completely ignores realism and logic, but unlike Rusty to the Rescue, which had a serious tone, this episode went full out for laughs. The Unlucky Tug said it's the funniest episode in the show, and I can only agree with him.
Hi, Gordon. Bye, Gordon. Want to race, Thomas? Beeped Birdie. Never mind.
And to be honest, the fact that it's unrealistic adds to how funny it is. It's just a bizarre and crazy situation. You're always thinking, what moron filled the jet engine with fuel? I remember the first time I watched this, my dad happened to be in the same room, and he was howling with laughter. That really shows something. Also, I don't usually praise the UK narrations simply because I don't usually watch them, but by God! Michael Angelis must have had so much fun with this episode. His energy is amazing.
The driver tried to put on the brakes, but Thomas couldn't stop. Thomas had never been so excited.
And again, the William Tell Overture only adds to the excitement. There's not much else I can really say that hasn't already been said. It's one hell of a ride, and always has me wanting more.